The last races of the season are coming up. That means one thing: who will finish strong and who will start the next season in the form of their life. Red Bull will obviously be the team to beat, but McLaren is closing in fast. And what about Mercedes? Will they be able to finally develop a worthy challenger? Stick around to find out what Mercedes and Red Bull are planning for their 2024 challengers. Mercedes is designing their 2024 Formula One car in a different way from the quantity over quality testing that driver George Russell believes contributed to the W14's flaws. Mercedes has been discussing a big car concept change for months, and the necessity for this, according to team president Toto Wolff, was well demonstrated during the recent race in Brazil, when Mercedes had a surprise bad weekend after winning there last year. Wolff stated that this demonstrated that it was necessary to commit to the vehicle changing completely for 2024, despite trackside engineering director Andrew Chauvelin having noted that whether Mercedes has resolved the handling difficulties that have plagued the W14 will depend on a number of projects. The drivers have backed Mercedes to do this and avoid making the same mistakes as the regulation cycle enters its third year. Russell's suggestion of an alternative method of operation will prevent Mercedes from just repeating the cycle. He believes Mercedes' dismal performance in 2022, the degree of the problems on that year's W13, and the need to recoup for 2023 prompted some hasty moves, but he's already satisfied that the 2024 process is bearing fruit. We have 12 months further information, direction, and we've managed to implement some of these changes we want for 2024. In certain tests so far this year that work as we anticipate, Russell goes on to remark. The work that we're putting into 2024, we've been a lot more thorough with our assessment of every single decision. The car was nowhere close to where we wanted it to be the last season, that's 2022, and felt a lot needed to change for 2023. We perhaps rushed a couple of decisions without thoroughly testing out the simulator, going through the potential consequences. We were just trying so many different things. It was more quantity over quality testing last year. Whereas this year, we've really nailed down on the direction we want to go. We've thoroughly tested that process to kind of triple check this is the direction we're taking. I'm confident 12 months later, we've now got 2 years worth of learning. I hope we're not going to be caught out by anything going into next year. This doesn't mean that we're going to have the fastest car on the grid, it just means I don't think we're going to stumble at the first hurdle. This level of detail was unusual, although it's not the first time that several ways have been mentioned. Russell's teammate Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes technical director James Allison, who returned to the post earlier this season in a switch that put Mike Elliott as chief technical officer until his recent departure, have both discussed it. Allison stated at the Qatar Grand Prix in October that Mercedes was holding more meetings rather than significantly altering the way they were conducted, admitting that we spend a bit more time with each other and that the drivers had also engaged more back at the factory, which Allison stated was to ensure that the things that we're working on are well aligned with what they're describing. He also stated that the 2024 car must have a strong foundation, since it would likely be vital to the 2025 car, given that most of 2025 will be spent working on entirely new standards for 2026. That might mean that 2024 is Mercedes' final major chance to take on this rule set before the focus shifts to 2026, which could determine the pecking order for several more seasons, emphasizing the significance of Mercedes having a more calm and effective development process now. This appears to correspond with a shift away from the picture of firefighting brought up by Russell's depiction of the 2022-23 process. Another significant change from this time last year is that one incredibly prominent individual is no longer with Mercedes at all after Elliott's resignation. Regardless of how much alignment existed when Elliott was the technical director and Allison was CTO, Mercedes is now operating under a different technical head on a daily basis and has lost a voice that the likes of Wolff and Hamilton have argued is so important and useful. This must have an influence on the development effort for 2024. Few will argue that Mercedes is no longer in safe hands with Allison, and their F1 teams are much too large and complex for one individual to be the difference between success and failure. Technically, there is no such thing as a single silver bullet. There are numerous moving elements in a huge system, which Mercedes managed to keep running perfectly for many years throughout its reign of championship domination. The body blow of how this rules cycle began seems to have severely disrupted that, but Allison appeared to be persuaded last month that the course correction had begun. I feel like all of us have got a pretty clear-sighted view of what we want to do with the car, he added. This championship, while we haven't made the really impressive progress that, say, McLaren have, we've nevertheless been charting a path through the season that gives us a very clear idea of what we need to put right. That makes next year's fun very exciting to look forward to, and this period of the year extremely enjoyable. The first answers on what Mercedes has learnt and how it is implementing that knowledge will not be available until next year's pre-season test. However, the final 2 races of 2023 will provide a more immediate appraisal of Mercedes' capabilities. Mercedes must demonstrate that the race in Brazil was only a nasty surprise, as Wolff described it, given that it was preceded by 2 more competitive races, with an improvement set to be a marker for its 2024 effort. Wolff seemed more positive about the first half of the season ending, double-header, a fresh, unique challenge in Las Vegas, than he did at the end of probably our most difficult weekend of the season. After promising performances in the US and Mexico, we didn't perform at our best in Brazil, Wolff told reporters. We have been hard at work to identify the wrong turn we took with the setup. We've done that. We understand our mistakes and can explain our performance loss to the field. Nobody could have expected Mercedes to reveal exactly what went wrong, how to repair it, and whether it could. Finally, on-track performance will be the litmus test. This is especially true for next year, and not only Wolff and Russell have spoken about their winter development, as their main man Hamilton has spoken about his expectations. Lewis Hamilton said the following about the upcoming winter development. "I'm in a team's group chat, basically with different departments, and I'll always be checking in. Of course I'll unplug, I have to leave the guys to do what they do best. I'm always going to be like, hey, I wonder how it's going, but you just got to give them time. It takes time to develop a car. It's small steps each week. On top of that, I got to get my head in the right space. I got to get fit and prepared for the next season, and spend some time with my family. It's been a killer season. It'll be interesting to see what Mercedes will be able to accomplish over the winter months, but one thing is sure, and that's that they're not the only ones improving their car over the winter. Because Red Bull believes it would be incorrect to just reuse its current car design for their RB20 Formula 1 Challenger in light of the competition coming closer. The Milton Keynes-based team has been in a league of its own during 2023, winning all but 1 Grand Prix while capturing both the drivers' and constructors' titles. While Red Bull's current RB19 still outperforms everyone else, the fact that rivals like McLaren are giving Red Bull a run for their money demonstrates that the field is tightening. And with Mercedes and Ferrari set to make significant upgrades to their cars this winter, Red Bull knows it cannot afford to be complacent when it comes to improving their 2023 competitor. Red Bull chief engineer Paul Monahan has indicated that, while the team will not make significant changes to its existing design for the 2024 car, it must discover advantages if it is to stay ahead of the competition. It would be wrong of us to just leave it alone because our opposition is getting a bit closer, he went on to say. But the rules are quite tight compared to what we've had in previous years, and with previous generations of car, where we could do a little bit more and move things around. It perhaps wouldn't surprise you if I said it, the 2024 car, will be an evolution of the current car, as it will be a bit foolish to throw this concept away. But equally, we've got to make some progress. We've got to find some lap time. The opposition is on us, and if they do a step, then we better have a bigger step. But it, the RB20, carries over a lot of the lessons and benefits of the current car, and then from Bahrain next year, we'll see whether we've done a good enough job. One advantage of Red Bull's 2024 car design is that it will have more wind tunnel time than the RB19. Last year, the squad was hampered by a 10% decrease in wind tunnel and CFD operations as part of its punishment for exceeding the cost cap restriction in 2021. This punishment has now ended. Monahan has repeated other team members' sentiments that the constraints it experienced last year trained it to be highly efficient with its job, something that will come in handy even with more running. It forced us to look again at the efficiency with which we do tests in the wind tunnel environment and in CFD. That's what he stated. And whilst everybody has a restriction, everybody wants the efficiency, so that caused us to make some small improvements. I don't think they'll be revolutionary, but any of those refinements we will keep as our benefit because, as we get a few more morsels of testing, then we use those morsels more efficiently. What are your thoughts on next year's car? Will there be huge developments, or will the teams just work on their current cars to try and improve it? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.